Welcome to this podcast series exploring women's lived experiences of gambling harm and the ways gambling has become part of women's everyday lives. This series is part of a broader project looking at how gambling can often feel hard to avoid, showing up in places where women socialize, connect, celebrate, and go about their daily lives. My name is Dr. Simone McCarthy. I'm a public health researcher at Deakin University. My research focuses on the commercial determinants of health, particularly how industries like gambling shape everyday environments and experiences of harm for women. Today, I'm joined by Anna Bardsley, who is a lived experience advocate, writer, speaker, and co-founder of Gambling Harm Lived Experience Experts, also known as GLEE. Anna has spoken publicly about surviving 10 years of gambling harm from poker machines and has spent more than a decade committed to changing the conversation about gambling harm in Australia by challenging the language and elevating the voices of people with lived experience. Thank you so much for being here today, Anna.
Thanks for having me, Simone.
Before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that today's conversation may touch on experiences of gambling harm, mental health, and recovery. Please take care while listening, and if anything discussed raises concerns for you, support services are available. So to begin, Anna, I'd love to start by hearing a little bit about what your life looked like for you at the time gambling became part of your everyday life.
Well, it was pretty tough, actually, at that time. My 19-year-old daughter had died in 1989. She was the second of my 5 children to have died, and so it was it's horrific anyway, but it was like a double whammy. Nothing felt safe. And I was doing the best I could, as everybody in my family was, but it had devastated us. And in the early 90s, and I've only recently put these pieces together because I was doing a timeline. And in the early 90s, poker machines were introduced to Victoria. And so they were advertised on television, which is a pretty scary thought now, as being, a place to go and make new friends and a great new form of entertainment and come along and have some fun. And so there was a group of women. We used to meet about 2 or 3 times a year and have a girls' night out. There was 5 of us. And they were all looking after me at that time because it was pretty tough. And so we would go along for a cheap and cheerful and a flutter. And most people know what that means because the meals were cheap in the pubs and the clubs to get you into there. And then we go into the poker machine room called the gaming room. And we would spend an hour or so in there, laugh a lot. Nobody lost any more than $20 any night. If somebody had lost and somebody had won a little bit, then you'd share a few dollars with somebody else so they could, stay and laugh a bit more. And that went on for several years. And it really was not a problem. I did not think that poker machine gambling, which I didn't know it was gambling either, because we talk about playing the pokies. So
Right.
like they're a fun game. We don't talk about gambling on the poker machines. I really didn't think it was an issue. I thought I was, and if you look at harm measures as we do these days, I would have been on the low end of the spectrum of harm. And it strikes me now that we say there are people on the low end of the spectrum and people on the higher end, as if that's your entry point.
Right.
Because my entry point was low, and eventually I ended up at the top, really, really high.
Yeah.
So that was fine. But my life was still tough. My marriage was not good. A lot of arguing at home, a lot of sadness at home. And one night after a particularly bad argument, I just had to get out of the house. I thought, I can't stay here. I grabbed the keys and handbag and got in the car. It was a cold, wet night in Melbourne and nothing was open, about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. And again, I unpacked this later. I was not aware of this when it was happening. So I was driving down the road and I saw one of those places that I used to go to with my friends. And the lights literally beckoned from the side of the road and said, come on in. Remember, you had fun in here. It was, and the thing that strikes me now is the most important thing was that I knew what to do.
Yeah.
I had never, at that point, I was in my 40s, I had never even been into a pub on my own before. I
Right.
would never have dreamt of going to like the pokies and on my own. I would, and I wouldn't have gone to a pub on my own. So if I had left the house and I hadn't had that priming experience of years of learning how to go in there, knowing that it was warm and safe, that they had security guards, that there were lots of women on their own, that there was a friendly environment, I don't think I would have gone in that night. And that night was, like I said, the first time I'd been to a pub on my own, the first time I went to pokies on my own, the first time I lost more than $20, and I lost a lot more than that. And the first time I stayed longer than I meant to. And it was the beginning of the end. And it wasn't very long after that I was going whenever I had an opportunity or whenever I could make an opportunity, whenever I could pretend I was somewhere else. And on reflection, I remembered how what had happened to me sitting in front of the machines that night, that I had sat there in a highly agitated state, and the machine literally calmed me down. And I learnt later that that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, when I learnt that stuff 10 years later, I was pretty horrified.
100%.
Mm,
Yeah. You needed more support and the machines pulled you in.
yeah. And it was a place to escape. And it worked. It did. I was able to leave the stress of home behind. And I even remember sometimes sitting there thinking, I deserve a break. And I did deserve a break, but I didn't deserve poker machine addiction. That's not
Mm.
what I really needed. So 10 years later, I eventually found the exit, but it destroyed what was left of any goodness in my life. It didn't make anything better. It made it all worse. And it wasn't, there were many, many times where I thought, because I tried to stop so many times. I didn't
Mm.
just, I thought, this is stupid. What are you doing? And I would get angry with myself and I'd say, you got to stop. And I hated that I was lying to people and that I was pretending that I was somewhere else and that I wasn't fully available for my family and even for myself because I was completely disconnected from everything. I stopped listening to music. I'm a singer and I love music. It's been something that nourishes and feeds me.
Right.
I stopped even listening to it, never mind singing along in the car
Mm.
or anything else. And and I stopped connecting to people. I was hiding and pretending everything was fine because you can. And I was very good at masking already.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd learned that at a young age, how to pretend I was fine. And people would say, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm
Mm.
fine." You could hide it, nobody knew. It was the depth of it was a complete secret from everybody in my life. And I've got to say, even me for a while,
Yeah.
it wasn't something even I wanted to look at because it was so awful.
And what did gambling harm look like for you? And how would you kind of define gambling harm now?
Um, it looked like the disconnect,
Mm.
the incredible, I mean, a lack of money because I put more money through those machines than I would ever have dreamt of spending on myself for anything else. And we didn't have a lot of money. I was working two jobs and putting all of that money through the machines and then using a credit card to juggle bills. And then I would get disgusted with myself when I'd stop for a while and I'd get all the finances back under control again.
Yeah.
And then bang, I was back again. So it was definitely financial. Um, but also my self-esteem had never been as low as it was then. I just thought I was a complete and utter loser. I was a useless human being, that there wasn't any point in expecting anybody to care about me or love me. And I honestly thought when I couldn't stop, because I tried so many times, I just thought this is going to be here until I'm dead. I'm never going to be able to stop. But it's never going to go away. I'll just be dead and it'll be gone. And so it was, I had to fight not to actually put some kind of plans in place. We'd had enough grief in my family, and I didn't want to put my children through that. And I knew the signs.
Mm.
I think that was useful that I knew the signs. So I fought. Used to say, step away from the edge,
Yeah.
step away from the edge. It sucked everything out of my life. It's like there was no oxygen left,
Mm.
and
Losing.
everything else, and it looked fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there are impacts that the people around you or people today don't fully understand about gambling?
Oh, yes, absolutely. At the time, there was, and there still is, a sense of a very strong message of personal responsibility.
Mm.
The language we used then, which is why I fought so hard to change it, was of problem gamblers. And it was that problem gamblers, there's only a few, so don't worry about them. We still talk about like a 1% of the population, but how many people is that?
Yeah.
And how do we know that's actually even accurate? Because I've said to people like you, lots of researchers and others, that if you talked to me when I was in the depths of gambling, I wouldn't have told you the truth. I
Mm.
wasn't telling myself the truth. So how could I tell you the truth of the extent of what I was doing? Um, it's it's a devastating thing, and the shame that came with it was just all encompassing. It was a blanket over every part of my life. There was nothing
Mm.
that I could feel good about in my life because I was doing this awful, secret, shameful thing. And when you say that, hang on, I'm going to have to cough.
That's okay.
When you point the finger at the people using the product and saying they're the problem, and even when we talk about like addictive personalities, I will not have that conversation with anybody. I have no more of an addictive personality than anybody else who had a life like I'd had.
Mm.
There were things that I needed in my life and I wasn't getting them. And I recognize now that the biggest barrier to me not ending up there, if that makes any sense, was that
Yeah.
I didn't know how to look after myself.
Mm.
I had lists of things that I needed to do, and I was never on any of them. I was raised as a good European Catholic woman, and European Catholic women have got a double whammy of having to be super good, and the more you discount your own needs and look after other people's needs, the better you are. Isn't she wonderful? Look at all those people she looks after.
Yeah.
And it's deadly. It's absolutely deadly. And I had to look, I'm still learning how to do that, how to look after
Mm.
myself.
Mm-hmm. And put on your oxygen mask first.
Put your own oxygen on first. Absolutely.
Do you think women experience gambling harm differently because of the roles and expectations often placed on them?
They must do, I think, because we experience pretty much everything differently. It's just the way life is. And it isn't that we're better or worse or anything else, it's just different.
Mm.
And I think in the environment of gambling, we are not seen as much as men are seen because it's seen as traditionally, I think, a men's pastime, if you like, for want of
Mm-hmm.
a better word, something that men do. And I'm noticing at the moment, and I am not for one moment saying that we shouldn't care about young men because I've got young men who are my grandsons,
Mm.
and I care deeply about them. And even if I didn't, I care deeply about
Yeah. Yeah. It
everybody.
does.
We
Yeah.
all matter.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we're talking about young men and how they're falling into gambling, but young women are too.
Mm.
Older women, everybody is a target for the gambling industry. They do not care what gender we are, how old we are, what our background is, how well educated we are, what our job is. They just want our money. They don't care about the rest. And they'll blame all of us at the same time.
100%. Absolutely. One of the things we talk a lot about in this project is the idea that gambling can feel really hard to avoid. Does this resonate with your experience?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and the only state in Victoria that doesn't have poker machines in pubs and clubs is WA. So unless you want to avoid gambling, gambling advertising is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Land-based gambling is everywhere on almost every street corner. And where I lived, the suburb I lived in Melbourne, it was on almost every street corner, everywhere you went. I couldn't drive home from work without going past a poker machine venue. Um, and there are TABs everywhere. It's on your phone. It is literally, we're saturated with gambling. Australia has got a massive gambling problem that is not being acknowledged at higher levels of decision makers. And I just got to wonder when is somebody going to actually stop and say, "Oh my God." And I've often thought that people who've lived through it, those of us, we call ourselves with lived experience, people who've lived through it have not only, we have a value to the conversation, not just because we gambled, but because we had to find a way out.
Yeah.
And it is not easy. It took me years to, I call it, find the exit. I felt like I was trapped. There's some of the work I've done has been theatre work, and I had wrote this little piece about trapped like a rat in a maze, like a rat in a maze, going round and round like a rat in a maze. And that's what it felt like, that there was no exit, that
Mm.
you couldn't, every time you thought you found the exit, it wasn't. It was either a blind end or another door into another opportunity to gamble. Um, but eventually I did, and I have to say it took years. It was years before I felt safe.
Yeah. And that may still exist for some people with the
Yes,
gambling products on every corner.
yes,
And
yeah,
like you said, you went for a drive and there was the gambling venue.
that's right. And the memory of knowing what to do.
Mm.
Once you know what to do, it's way easier to do it.
Yeah. And do you think it was, yeah, normal for women to be in those environments?
Oh, absolutely, and it still is.
Yeah.
And it's when I've occasionally been into one to have a look these days at who's in there, and there's all age ranges, all backgrounds. You only have to look at who's in the car park. What sort of cars are in the car park?
Yeah.
At what time of day? And they're there fairly early in the morning at opening time.
Mm.
Tradies cars, ordinary cars, fancy cars, and they're not all just there for lunch.
Yeah. Do you think that constant exposure to gambling products changes how people think about gambling over time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It makes it just so much part of the landscape.
Mm.
And it makes it so normal for other children and for other people around you. If I remember going to a place that had poker machines for on my way home from somewhere, it was the only place open, so I had dinner there, and I was sitting in the dining room, and on the table next to me was a young family with a little kid, preschool age, learning to their numbers and learning to read and stuff. And they were using the Keno screens to call out the numbers, to learn their numbers. And I
Yeah.
thought, holy hell, how do they get away with that? And because there's not supposed to be any gambling products in view of the dining room, and yet there's
Mm.
the Keno screens all around the dining rooms.
Yeah. All
And the
in.
forms on the table, so gave the child a form to tick off the numbers as they came up on the screen to learn their numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
All,
yes, it's absolutely normalized. They've got playgrounds.
yeah. All child friendly.
Yeah. And if you look at the signs outside of poker machine venues of what they're advertising, you can see who they're marketing to. That strikes me. I'm a former businesswoman, and I thought this is very clever
Yeah.
because they will have kids eat free. So they're targeting families, young families. Tradies Palmers. There we go. I want the tradies in. Seniors meals free, half price. So they don't care who it is. They just want people in the door. And as a business owner, former business owner, I can see that if you got a product and you want to sell it, that's how you do it. But it depends what your product is and whether it's even an ethical product, because this is not an ethical product.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it ethical to have discounted meals when they're being paid for by
Yeah.
members of the community
Yes. Yeah.
with the gambling products?
Yeah. I maintain they've destroyed the pub culture in Australia.
Hmm.
Used to be you could go to all kinds of live music
Mm.
at pubs and clubs, and it hardly exists now. And clubs were a place where people went to catch up with each other because they had common interests. I think RSL clubs are a particularly diabolical place when they add poker machines to them because the vets go there to be with people who understand them, and they end up hooked on the pokies.
Yeah. They're not actually looking after them.
No, no, no.
You,
And it's literally blood money. People have died
mm,
because of this. It's not it. No. And people are losing everything. I know people who've lost their houses. I'm very privileged in this space because I still own a house, and my family still talk to me,
mm,
and I'm still alive. I work with a lot of people who have nothing, who lost everything, houses, superannuation, the lot. People who should be living well in self-funded retirement,
yeah.
who are in insecure housing, going to food banks, and it's only because of gambling.
And that puts a lot of pressure on governments.
It does. The cost it's got to be way bigger than we even think it is. Never mind the opportunity cost. I think of the opportunity. When I
Mm.
discovered that phrase, I thought, I'm going to have a look at what that actually means.
Yeah.
And when I looked just at my life, the opportunity cost of 10 years of devastating effects of gambling, where I was immobile and unable to do anything, never mind contribute to society.
Mm.
I look at what I've done since, and then you multiply that. The opportunity cost is huge, and the cost to families, to children who grow up in households where gambling is just has devastated the family life, the cost to them for the future, even if they don't end up gambling themselves, the trauma.
Yeah.
So,
You were able to find the exit. Can you talk to me about your experiences seeking support?
well, I'm a great pretender. I'm very good at putting on a good face and pretending I'm better than I am.
Mm.
So I knew I needed help. I knew I wasn't managing it. I was carrying around one of those cards that you can get in a venue that says, "Do you need help?"
Yeah.
It's for years, and so much so that the card would get bedraggled and dead looking, and I'd get another one.
Yeah.
And I'd think, I'm going to ring them one day. I am. I'm going to ring. I'm going to ask for help. But for some reason, at the time, I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think that help was for me. I don't know why.
Mm.
I knew it was for people who were gambling, but I didn't like join those dots, and I couldn't do it. And I had a friend who was invited to be part of a pilot program of social inclusion for people who were gambling or who were trying to stop gambling, and of like replacing, because you can't, if you stop something, you create a vacuum. You have to add something else back in to take the place of the space, no matter what the pastime is. And so this was meant to give people the opportunity over a year to spend more time doing other things besides gambling.
Yeah.
And they were invited to bring along a support person. So she said she knew a little bit about my history. And so she said, why don't you come along and be my support person? It'll be good for both of us, and we'll get to know each other and spend time together, and it'll be good. And it was. It was really good.
Mm.
Um, I did tell the person organizing it that I too was a gambler, but I didn't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
I just did all the stuff, enjoyed all the pastimes, and some of them were a lot of fun, African drumming and all sorts of things. It was,
Yeah.
and and at the end of it, at the end of the year, I fessed up and told the rest of the group that I had, and they were just so kind and didn't bat an eyelid, and they just said, "Oh, I'm glad you told us, and I'm glad you did that," because I hadn't gambled at all that year as well. It had been like a year and a half since I'd gambled, but I still didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
So then I asked for a referral to somebody because of my complex trauma history. I've had some bad counselling.
Mm.
It was really hard work. So I decided I didn't want to take the risk of getting just some person who couldn't handle my big story, because the grief was pretty intense still. And it rocks a lot of people when you tell the and then, because there was more than the two children who died. So I asked for some referrals, and I was given one near home and one near work. So I chose the one near work because I didn't want anybody at home to know anybody near home, because I was very well known in the local community. We'd been there for a long time, for 40 something years, 30 something years. And so I chose the one near work because then I thought it's less likely someone will recognize me going into a Gamblers Help Services.
Right.
So, and I'm fine with that. But I recognized it at the time. I thought, that's good. That's all right. So I started going every week and talking and talking and talking and talking about all the trauma in my life and the stuff that had gone on. And then I was invited to be, there was a brochure, a flyer on the table beside me, which I found out she'd put there on purpose, which is quite clever, for writing workshops with Arnold Zabel, because I had studied writing and I liked writing. It had been a tool that I used after my daughter died, to as a therapy tool, and then as a way to share the experience and educate and connect to other people. So I thought, oh, that'll be fun. I'll go along to this writing workshop and I'll learn to write more better. And so off I went, and Arnold is amazing. He's a Melbourne writer who works with marginalised people, and he was so kind and gentle with us. And I was avoiding writing about the gambling. I wrote the grief, and I wrote about all sorts of other things. And I thought, no, let's just leave the gambling alone. And then he called us back after a couple of weeks and said, no, now I want you to put yourself in the place where you gambled. And I want you to see and smell, and what can you see and touch, and what's around you, and what are you doing, and what are other people doing. And then I remembered some of the things that I had done, because most of it was a haze. That's one of the things about the disconnect. You just don't remember. You're just on autopilot. But I remembered my phone buzzing in my pocket, and it was on silent, and I just ignored it, going out to the car park and seeing 6 or 7 missed calls from home, lying about where I'd been, saying, oh, I got held up at work, or I went and visited someone, or I'm at the shops, and I remembered being there at 3 o'clock in the morning and looking around and thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And coming home at 3:30 and rolling the car down the driveway so I wouldn't wake up the dog, and he would wake up the household, and they'd know where I'd been. And I remembered that sense, that enormous sense of shame. And I wrote then about that. And somehow it unpacked the last piece of the puzzle for me, because I had done other stuff. And of course, when you go into groups, and I had been in some other groups while I was doing the therapeutic work, you meet people who know things you don't know. And so there were people there who had told me the machines are designed to do what they did to you and to me, what they did to us. I found out I wasn't the only one, and that other people had similar reasons for why they were there, or different reasons, but we were all in the same boat. And then I looked at the legislation around poker machines in Australia, and I thought, this is ridiculous. How did they let this happen? How did we let them into Victoria? These I don't know, they're beasts of awful, nasty. I ran out of words. And then I recognized the language. I thought the language, when I looked at the shame, I realized how much the language had contributed to it. The language problem gambler, responsible gambling, set a limit and stick to it, I thought every time I walked into one of those places, I set a limit. And once I was in front of the machine, I couldn't stick to it.
Yeah.
And there was no way to help you to do that. So that's what we're advocating for now an actual physical break, that you could put your foot on the pedal and say, no, that's it, before you start using the machine.
Mm.
So I was outraged by that, and part of my chapter was about shame, and it finished up at the end with what I had then realised and what I thought needed to change, that language needed to change and that legislation needed to be tightened. And I didn't expect to ever do anything else with it. The work was published. There was two of us in the group who had publishing skills. There was a woman who was a professional editor, and she did a fabulous job of editing the work. And I had been a desktop publisher in a previous life, so I did the typesetting and designed the book. And we were all very proud of it. We thought it was fantastic. We were so excited. The whole group was excited about having a book. And we spent 2 weeks talking about what name we would use.
Mm.
Nobody even considered using their real name, because nobody was doing that in those days. There was like one or two people in the media talking about it occasionally, and the media was still terrible about it. They were calling us a bunch of degenerates, and why don't they just stop, and the zombies and all that sort of stuff. So then I tried to rationalize writing so personally about shame and being too ashamed to put my name on it. But this is like when things go clunk, clunk, clunk. And I was only able to put my name on the work because I was ready to retire. We
Right.
we were ready to sell the family business, because I ran the office. I was a bookkeeper and an office manager. I knew that if I went public with this, I would never get another job, because I wouldn't even give me an interview if I knew that this person who's applying for this job to handle money had a gambling issue. You wouldn't. Doesn't make sense. So because I was ready to retire from paid work, I thought I can do this. So I showed my family. I put my name on it. Judy Avasar, who was the organizer of the project, asked me if she could put my name and phone number on the press release, because she said the press like to talk to a real person. I thought,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, yeah, sure. I'd done press before in my years working in bereavement care. I knew how to talk about tough story, how to handle the press a bit. And I didn't think that anybody would take any notice, because nobody was taking any notice of anything gambling in those days. It was 2013.
Mm.
But I underestimated Arnold's clout, and he and I did the rounds of ABC studios, like started with breakfast on the couch, national TV, telling the whole world I was a loser gambler and what I thought needed to change. We did national radio, we did local radio, we did local TV, we did all kinds of things. And it went on for several weeks. And I spoke at the launch of the book, and it just went from there. And I thought, well, that's it once that was done. But the Arnold got us a gig at the Melbourne Writers' Festival and said to do a dramatised reading of the book. This is what we decided to do. And that was the beginning of the theatre work of Three Sides of the Coin. And it was I just thought, I'm just going to keep talking about language. You can't call us problem gamblers. We're not the problem. The product is the problem. And it evolved and changed. And I recognized there was something shifted in that work of the book that I did with the book. Something shifted. And I don't know how it happened. It was like owning something, and it was like taking something out and going, oh my God, look at this. Because it was very hard. It was hard to look at it. It was hard to write it, so which is why I wrote it in the third person, because it's a little bit easier to be a bit more distant from it. And then to look at it and go, yeah, but it's only part of the story, because yes, we take responsibility for what we did, But I realized let's share the shame is what I used to say back in those
Yeah.
days. Let's share it. How about the industry that has this amoral, unethical product that they're touting like it's entertainment, which it's not. And how about the government who allows it? Take on some of the shame.
Mm.
And and so it's just sort of kept going from there. Things have changed since 2013, but not enough.
Yeah.
Um, we're always so grateful to researchers like you who put your life's work into this. So we've got evidence-based stuff that we can say, see, it's not just us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been really open about the shame that can surround gambling harm, particularly among women. What do you think kind of the role is there for stigma and shame playing for women experiencing gambling harm?
Well, I think what I'd like to say to anybody who is experiencing that at the moment is that you are not alone, that it's not all your fault. You didn't like do this to yourself. This, if you're using poker machines, they're one of the most dangerous products on the planet. Um, if you're using other gambling products, the inducements and the way the gambling industry works means that they're out to get you. They have, it's important to remember that they have a business model predicated on addiction. They make more money if they have more people addicted to their products. And so they work that. And I would also want you to know that there is a way out. You don't have to live like that. And I think the most important thing is that everything is better without gambling. Color comes back into your life. And I have realized that it's never too late to be who you want to be. I don't care how old you are or young you are, because even when we're young, sometimes we think we've wasted opportunities. And I think it's important to only look back to learn. If you can learn something from looking back, that's good.
Mm.
If you're looking back and it's just taking you back, it's pointless. Get some help. There is help, and the help is good. I still talk to a gambler's help counselor because and it's really important to know that it's free
Yeah.
because money is an issue for us. Spending money on ourselves is an issue for us after we've lost all that money. Gamblers help counseling is free and it's worth it. And if you ring up and get a counselor that you don't quite gel with, ask for another one. Find someone that you trust, that you could sit with, that you can begin to unfold your stuff with. And
Yeah.
remember to be kind. Being hard on yourself and because I was really hard on myself. I call myself all sorts of terrible names. And I realized that it wasn't helping, that if I could try to learn to begin to be kinder to myself, then it would shift something, and it did. But it's hard to do.
Yeah.
If you're used to putting yourself down, it's quite hard to do, but it's worth it.
100%. And you've spoken about the importance of language. What impact can language have on stigma and help seeking?
Language, if you change the language, you change the conversation. And I think we are changing the language. It's still a little way to go, but most people are using better language. Like we're talking about gambling harm. We talk about gambling industry harm because remember that's where the harm is coming from. It's coming from the gambling industry that has a business model predicated on addiction. It wants that, and it's always looking for new people to bring into the fold to turn them into addicts. Um, Language about yourself is important to use. Language about other people. If there is someone in your life who is struggling with gambling or you think they might be, remember that and you want to help them, the most important thing is for you to maintain a trusting relationship with them, so that too much advice isn't necessarily the way to go. But the checking in, are you okay? Talking about something you might have heard some of these podcasts and you've said, I was listening to someone the other day and they said, it is possible to stop, and that they found this helpful. But maintaining a respectful relationship, people don't set out to do this on purpose, even when they're hiding it, even when they're in denial, because that all comes with it. Yeah, but there is a way out, and you're not alone.
Do
And
you
you're
think
not the problem. You're not the problem.
you're not the problem? Do you think the way gambling harm is discussed publicly still places too much responsibility on individuals?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes, certainly politicians are still, some of the ones with power are still talking about, well, set a limit. People should just, we need to teach people to set a limit.
Mm.
And then if they stick to that limit, they'll be okay. And you think, well, that's all very well. But the way gambling is promoted and the way the products work, that's not always possible. And so it would be good to, I would love to have a public conversation with decision makers about the reality of how harmful gambling actually is, and that it is the product, not the people.
Mm.
That we have let loose a bad thing into it. I can't think of the word for it. I don't want to say dragon because I like dragons, but let something loose into our society
Yeah,
that is toxic, and the fact that we think it's okay to expose children to it is quite scary. Quite scary.
very scary. And you've been involved, you've been a leader actually in advocacy and sharing your experiences publicly. How has that been for you?
Good and bad. Good and bad. It's good. It's good. I like having meaningful work.
Mm.
I don't think I could just sit around and be retired, if in the regular sense of the word. I know that's not everybody is. Lots of people don't have paid work and do other things. But I feel like this is an opportunity to change something, and we've started it, but we need to shift it a bit harder. And working out what lever to push. What do you have to do to get this to happen? I've met some amazing people who've opened doors for me that I try to do for other people too. Because you meet some people who close the door, and there are other people who say, no, not now.
Mm.
Glee was set up by Paul Fung and myself because we had worked together for a number of years and we were just sick of being told what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And and we thought it was time for a stronger lived experience voice and an unfettered one. We wanted to be able to just say what we want politely. We don't want to be out there. We do it privately.
Yeah.
You know, curse and swear and all the rest of it privately, but publicly we want to be able to hold government to account, and we want to hold our people and tell them that it's okay, that they're not alone. And we wanted to gather other people like us around us so that they weren't alone working in this space. And what I'd love to see is a lived experience paid workforce. Been wanting that for a long time, like we have in mental health and AOD.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that we are more than our sad stories, that we have other things to offer. We have the other things we've learnt in life. We have other skills, and we can use them for all kinds of good. And one of the things I learnt from a politician was that politicians care about their constituents. And so when you talk to people, he said, tell them to contact their local member. So if you're listening to this and you care about this, contact your local member and tell them what you think. And if you're not sure what to say, contact us and we'll come with you.
Mhm.
And remember that online gambling is federal and poker machines is state. So contact your local state member for poker machines reforms and your federal member or the Prime Minister, go for it.
And Glee was created to ensure that people with lived experience of gambling harm are part of the conversation about reform and change.
Yes.
Why do you think lived experience voices are so important in shaping public understanding and policy responses to gambling?
Well, I think it comes back to that lovely phrase, nothing about us without us, which I think comes from the disability sector. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I love it. It's so succinct and perfect because dealing with gambling, the need for gambling reforms around gambling products is about, we know it from a different perspective than other people like you, for instance. You know it from your perspective, and there is not a there's something missing if you don't have the lived experience perspective. And we can tell decision makers things that other people don't even know about. And there's so much wisdom that we bring, not only from the deep end of the pool when we were in there drowning,
Mm,
but from trying to get out, from being out, from looking at it from this perspective, from listening to other people's stories, because I know that when I go speak to decision makers, I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about the hundreds of people that I've talked to in the years that I've been doing advocacy work, and I remember them all, I feel them, and
mm.
um, particularly the families bereaved by suicide because of gambling. That is the really, really, really dark end of it. And we don't even know the numbers properly because there is no coroner that counts them. So there's some data that's missing. They're estimates. And I have to say that it's important to know the whole picture.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's important to have people. We try not to go to things on our own. We try to
Hmm.
go in pairs at least, because so many times you'll go into a room with all kinds of people who are very comfortable in their own skin and comfortable in the room because it's their environment, and they've invited you in. So, oh, we must have a person with lived experience on this committee or whatever. And you go in there and you think, oh, okay, now what am I supposed to do here
Yeah.
by
It's not a
myself?
safe environment for you.
No, it's not, especially when there's industry at the table as well.
Yeah.
So,
So, what do you think needs to change so gambling is not so embedded in women's everyday lives?
um, I think if we could, we need to put in place the things that we already know need to be put in place. The Murphy report came back with some recommendations that just make sense. There was nothing outrageous there. The getting rid of, over a period of time, gambling advertising from all places, including TikToks and influencers, and because there's forms of advertising now that aren't the traditional forms of advertising that I grew up with, certainly. Um, we've been world leaders before with tobacco, with seatbelts, with all kinds
Mm.
of things that were about safety. So this is about safety and consumer protection. If we put some of those things in place, when it comes to things like poker machines, there is no state in Victoria that uses account-based play, as they call it,
Mm.
which means that there is no way for a person who uses poker machines to even know how much they lost. Think about that.
Yeah.
Online gambling accounts, you can get a statement. With poker machines, I have, because people used to ask me, how much did you lose?
Yeah.
And I literally had no idea, because I had no idea. And which is how I came up with the answer that I lost 10 years of my life, because the time was way more important than the money in the
Mm.
end, although the money was important. So I've forgotten the question. What were we talking about?
how gambling is embedded in women's
Ah.
lives.
So if we had some safeties in place for consumers, men, women, everybody, and let's
Mm.
face it, children are gambling, so let's have some really good safeties in place so that we weren't constantly being bombarded with this stuff. If we had better services for women, women experiencing family violence need to have somewhere else to go besides a poker machine venue, which is where I went.
Yeah.
And they need to know that there are all kinds of levels of harm at home that it's okay to ask for help for. It is
Hmm.
just the extreme end. The same with gambling. Gambling you might not be in the deep dark end of the pool, but if you're not happy with the hold that gambling has on you, with the amount of time you're spending on it, with the amount of money you're spending on it, then you are being harmed by gambling. And it's okay, in fact, encouraged to ask for help early in the piece. So if we could please, could we put in place some Tasmania talked about it,
Mm.
Victoria's talking about it, but we've gone quiet in Victoria. ACT's sort of talking about it, but talking about it sideways. If we could have account-based use of poker machines across the country is ideal, so that you have one card, and I'd rather it didn't have anything to do with the industry, that it was a government-issued card with a binding loss limit. And it needs to be a sensible binding loss limit. You should not be able to put on it like $5,000 a week or something. That's just absurd. And if we could just tell the industry to sit down and shut up, the heyday's over. We're going to start protecting people. And so you better start counting the money you've got, because you're not going to get as much as you used to get. If we stopped accepting every time we come back with a new number, like when they told us last year, was it, that was $32.5 billion was lost to gambling in Australia? Just rolls off your tongue. People were saying, oh, we've
Mm.
lost 32.5 billion. You think, no, 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 stop.
That's outrageous.
32.5 with how many zeros? Billion dollars.
Outrageous.
That's gone out of the economy into gambling operators' pockets.
Yeah. Out of local communities. It's not just a number, it's
No, it's
people.
not. No, that's money that should have been. It's not money people have got stashed under the bed. It's not money that they might spend on an overseas holiday. It's money for rent and mortgage and food and clothes and school shoes and school books and excursions. And it's money ordinary people can't afford to lose.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and perspectives with us today. And I really appreciate your openness and willingness to have these conversations. Before I finish, is there any final message you would say to women who might be experiencing something similar?
You're not alone. There are people who care. Um, Look for help. And if you're not sure where to go, find the Glee website. I know there's going to be help services added to this podcast. And it's worth it. Get some help. And remember, it's never too late to be who you want to be. I don't care what's in your life. It's okay.
That's a great message. And thank you again for being a part of this series. Conversations like these are really important in helping people better understand how gambling has become normalized within everyday life and in opening up conversations about support, prevention, and change, particularly for women. So, just a reminder that if anything discussed today in today's episode has raised concerns for you, support services are available, and I'll put them in the show notes, as well as Glee's contact details. But thank you so much for listening to today's conversation. And if this resonates with you, we encourage you to share this episode and explore the other episodes in the series to hear more lived experience perspectives and conversations about how we can better respond to gambling harm for women. Thank you.
Thanks, Simone.